Fabian, aka the Dizzy Viper.
Hey guys. Oh my god, it's so cool to be here for the first time. Like, it's not my first time at the D2, it's also not my first time on stage, but it's definitely the first time I've ever spoken to so many people in person. So thank you so much, Jason and Fabio, for having me here. It's a huge pleasure. Thank you so much. So yeah, my talk today is going to be about a little bit of my work and specifically about my mindset of how I work. That's why my presentation is called Tales from a Successful 3D Artist Who Does Not Do This for a Living. And I'm going to get more into why and what I do for a living. So my name is Fabian Oberhammer. I am a 3D artist from Italy. I'm from South Tyrol, so that's why my mother language is German and not Italian. I'm 24 years old. I have about 8 years of experience in the 3D business. And my main job in this branch is stage visuals and digital art. And my big hobby are daily renders and everydays. I started doing those because of the one and only Beeple. I thought it was a good idea to learn the softwares and all that, which it was. And I started out 8 years ago using Blender because it was free. I still think it's probably one of the best softwares all around if you want to get into the space. And it wasn't really for me, unfortunately. I didn't really like it too much. And so I switched to Cinema 4D 2 years later. And I really got hooked on it once I started combining it with Octane Render. That's when my true passion for all of this really came out. And you know, recently, in the past 2 years, the digital art space also evolved a little bit with NFTs, and that really got me hooked as well. So I want to start out with what software I use. Of course, I mainly use Cinema 4D and Octane Render, but you know, it branches out into different softwares that you use to really make your workflow easier and faster. And some programs you just can't work without, like After Effects and Photoshop to do post-editing. Actually, for videos, I use Nuke as well for more complex stuff. For assets, I use Kitbash 3D, which is those guys, one of my favorite brands for 3D models, super great price, and like you can use them for pretty much everything, which is very important to me since I do renders of very various different things. So I'm not just only in one genre of renders, and I like to reuse many models of those. Quixel also great. Something I've been using from the start is also World Creator to create you know, landscapes. I've actually been lucky enough to be one of the alpha and beta testers back in 2016. And I've still used it to this day, and it's a very great workflow compared to, you know, I used to use World Machine, which took forever to generate landscapes in a, you know, high resolution. And Marvelous Designer, I haven't used it that much, but I couldn't work without it because, you know, some clients do need cloth simulations and stuff, and those are super quick to do in Marvelous Designer. And Topaz, Gigapixel and Topaz Studio probably, you know, for post-editing also great. So let's get a little bit more into my daily renders. I've been doing this for the past 5.5 years, never missed a day. I gotta say, I don't do this the way that Beeple does it, so I don't necessarily create the render that I post that very day. For example, now since I'm here, I don't have an option to create renders, so I had to work ahead. But I basically have an image for every day of the year. And I started doing this because I wanted to learn how to, you know, get into the software more, because I figured out when you do it for, let's say you make a render one day and then you don't do it for a week and then you do a render again, you're not gonna get anywhere quickly. And once I started doing the daily renders, I had like an incredible learning curve, very exponential in the first week already. And it has gotten up ever since. It's a great method. But what I truly fell in love with while doing the daily renders is actually that it's the daily creation itself, not necessarily the 3D aspect of it, but like doing something every single day, and specifically having something to look back to after a certain amount of time. So, you know, I have all my folders with every day I've ever created, and I sometimes just like to go back to like the first year and check like what did I do back then, how did my style change, how did I improve, and sometimes I rework some of my old renders to see how I would do it now, and Another interesting aspect of it as well is that I do actually have a memory of every single day of those past 2,500 days. So when I look at one of the images, there is at least one memory that I can recall from that day, whether that is an important memory or whether it is a completely random memory, but it's just beautiful to not forget some of the moments that I can only recall because of the image that I made that day. And as you can see from here, they variate in many different genres. Like, I love working with fog. You know, Octane and fog are you know, it's really cool working with fog and developing different styles, different styles of fog, especially because you can do photorealistic fog, you can go into illustrative fog, and it's really cool to be able to work with this on a daily basis and try something new every single day. Also, for example, one day I make a, like you can see here, like what are they called, like, what are they called, actually? I forgot. My Polaroid series, where I was thinking, you know, I always use backlights in every single of my renders. It's probably visible on all the other renders. Everything has like backlit scenery. And I thought there has to be a way to create renders with frontal lighting that don't look bad. And I thought, like, how do they do it in photography, right? So like, there are images that look great, but have frontal light. And the first thing that came to my mind is camera flash. And even though camera flash doesn't look beautiful in that sense, but it has some sort of emotion to it, like this abandoned, left out, amateur type rendering. So I started doing a complete series, which I'll show you later, out of these abandoned car renders. And that was a lot of fun, and also, like, for example, the neon cities that you can see, like, up here, you know, experimenting with different kit bashes, different lightings, different methods for doing holograms, for example, which works, which is actually quite fun to work with as well. And gotta give a shout out to the guys at Kitbash for this as well, because they make kits. I can use it for pretty much everything I want, and experiment with them throughout the day. It's a ton of fun, I can just say that. And there are some more about. Actually, this slide is about how I get inspiration for renders, which is. You know, a lot of it is throughout the day, but these 8 specific renders is where I recreated dreams I had. So that's where a lot of inspiration comes from. So I just dream at night. Next morning, I write up what I dreamt and like try to recreate it as best as I can. And obviously, I dream it in a first-person view, but the render is third person. But yeah, for example, one of the first renders I did with the dream is the Boston Dynamics one that I did. You see up there with the astronaut being dragged along the moon, being dragged by Boston Dynamics robots, which also got a lot of attention on social media, I gotta say, because Boston Dynamics found it was really funny, and I got really scared that I get into a lawsuit because of it, but I didn't, fortunately. That's also something that I'm always careful with my car renders, because there are certain brands, wink wink Ferrari, that really drag you into a lawsuit if you don't do what they want. And the one big disadvantage of doing daily renders, though, is that, at least for me, I unlearned how to spend a lot of time on renders. So I'm used to making these anything between 30 minutes and 2 hours. So, you know, the 30-minute renders, for example, are like the one with the neon car. Those are the ones that take me 40 minutes to 45 minutes, because I've actually developed a super quick workflow throughout these years. So I'm able to come up with an image within a few seconds and then make it reality in another 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how much I have to work and develop new shaders if I need them. But yeah, with these neon renders specifically, I have developed a workflow that makes it very quick and efficient. But the downside of it is, like I said, that I unlearned how to spend time on images. So, for example, when a client comes to me and says, like, hey, I want like a photorealistic image of this and that, and I know that it's gonna take me like a week to make, when I got these first clients, I realized, oh my God, I don't know what to add after 2 or 3 hours. Like, I was there making this render, 4 hours later, I told him it takes 4 days, I'm done with it, but it doesn't look the way that I wanted, and I really, like I said, I lost the feeling for how to add more detail, how to really overthink, you know, the rule of thirds, Fibonacci, and all that. So what I started then, that was about 1.5 years ago, I started doing weekly and monthly renders for fun that have nothing to do with my dailies. So they have a lot more detail and a lot more thought for it, specifically for atmosphere and color. So this one, for example, this one was the first day that I got Quixel, so I really had to make use of it. And I spent, I think, 9 days on this. Gotta also say that I only had a GTX 1080 Ti, which made it really difficult to render a 4K image with fog. So half of the time I didn't even see what I was doing. But this is how it turned out. It took me 9 days to do, and I do this more often now just so I get used to spending more time on images again. Same with the next one. This one was also an experiment with the same assets, with the same mood. I tried to create these cityscapes and just try to think of more detail to add. You know, when you go into a busy street, there is a lot of details that you actually see, but you don't consciously see them, right? So I really had to look at a lot of references to actually see what does trash in the street look like. How does it lay on the ground? Where is it? Because it's not on some random on the street. It's probably like here on a construction site, which is, the trash from the construction workers left out for the bin guy to take it over. And yeah, these are all things that I completely left out doing daily renders. So that's in my opinion that one big advantage of doing daily renders. Big advantage of this, you get a lot of quick learning, lots of quality, lots of quantity, and it's just easier to get your name out there, because that is, for example, how I got my first clients. As a freelancer, it's always difficult to get your first clients. And I started doing daily renders for fun, started posting, my social media grew, and that's how I got my first clients without looking for them. Also this one, for example, this one has a really cool story. This is called This Is My Mexico, and this is where I try to find a way to show speed and weight of a car, but in a still image. And the way I used to do it is just have motion blur in it. Motion blur shows motion, but it's not enough. And I figured that different cars have different types of suspension, so they tilt in a way when they drift. So for example, the Ferrari in the back has a harder suspension, which makes it tilt not so much as the Mustang in front. And as soon as I tried this for the first time, I figured out, hey man, this really shows a lot more emotion to the render once they tilt like that, because it shows like, okay, the model is not just an empty shell. It's actually, it has weight, it is heavy, it is fast, and there are physics involved. And it was really fun to experiment with this. This is a very early work, so that's why the smoke in the back looks like crap, but because I didn't know how to do that. I got a lot better than that, don't worry. But and the next one is another car render. I think you figured by now I'm a big car guy. I love doing car renders. This one was done to test a shader that a friend of mine did, which is a car paint shader, which is not quite easy to make. This was a car paint shader by Smouse. And I made this render to showcase this shader as good as possible, as well as the tires, which is a shader that I created. The goal with this was basically just to show as much detail and show the product as good as I can, but still staying true to my style, because I could have done it in photorealism, which wouldn't, first of all, I'm not good at that, but at the same time, I'm not, it's just not what I like to do. I like to go into this stylized, little bit painterly look of it, and this is one that I did, I think, half a year ago. I also experiment a lot with different aspect ratios throughout the entire daily render thing. All my renders on my Instagram are basically 4:5, which sort of limits me on what I can do with camera work, what I can do with space, and all these theories like the rule of thirds, the Fibonacci spiral, and the golden spiral actually. They work differently with different aspect ratios, and since I've only been doing 4:5 renders, aspect ratio 4:5, I also completely, once I did a wallpaper in 21:9, I had no idea how to fill the space on the side, and I was missing the space on top and at the bottom, so I really had to rethink the entire images sometimes. This one right here is my Drift series. This is probably one of the most known series I've made. It's all started with the DeLorean render right here, with the DeLorean. Also, try to make renders of cars that you usually don't see drifting, you know, like the Rolls-Royce or the Tesla. You don't see those cars drifting. And that one got a lot of attention because I also, with this image that on Instagram actually got a lot of traction, I also the same day published a tutorial on how to do this, which was specifically about efficiency. So since I have to do one every single day, I developed ways of being very quick. So for example, this one, the background right here is just an emitted image. It's an emissive light that has a texture of a city. And the funny thing is the cars don't move in these scenes. It's actually a scene that moves by. Because I used Octane 4 with this one, and that one had a really big issue with motion blur. I'm sure some of you know that. So the easiest way to make the cars not blur is just to blur the entire rest of it. So when you look at the scene, it's actually quite funny because the animation, it's just the entire scene with all the lights and the camera moving by the car, and the car just stays still. But it worked out. Yeah, with this tutorial, it got a lot of traction. I love to see that a lot of my followers try to recreate these images and try their own style. That's what I love about it even more, is I see that inspired by these images, but they put their own emotion to it, their own passion to it, and create something entirely new with those. And I really, really like to see that. That's also the same with the next series, which is the Polaroid series, which you've seen earlier, a few of those, with the abandoned car renders. This one was a study actually to create a dust shader in Octane without, you know, I'm not very good with texturing and Substance Painter and so on, so I do all my work in Octane nodes, which sometimes takes a little longer, but I feel more comfortable in that. So all the dust shading and stuff is done with basically it's just a follow-up map mixed with different bump maps, dust textures, and even some custom textures like you see in the Trabant up there, the Wash Me sign. You can just, you know, you basically can paint what you want to have written on it in Photoshop and stuff. It's pretty fun. So you can just, yeah, put Wash Me on it or whatever you want. And these were also tried to recreate a lot. I've done one of these on my live streams. I actually do stream on Twitch live twice a week to show my workflow and work on daily renders and stuff. And that was the bottom one right here. This one was done on stream. This one took a little bit longer actually because I wanted to make it look as realistic as possible in terms of object scattering. And this one actually took me like 3.5 hours. It's not a lot either, but for me, for a daily render, it's actually really, really long. but the viewers enjoyed it. That's the important thing. So to the main question, which is, for example, why I don't do this for a living and what would I do, freelance or studio? I actually worked in a studio for 6 months doing VFX for movies. We worked on you know, smaller movies in a bigger manner. We worked on bigger movies for like small parts. For example, I can always say that I changed the color of a pillow in a scene in Ready Player One. What's that in the resume, huh? I changed the color from blue to green. Isn't that nice? Took me 2 weeks. And I was working there because I thought, you know, I have to make this a job. This is my passion, my true passion. I have to make this a job. And this was arguably one of the worst decisions I've ever made. So I worked at the studio for 6 months. And I came home after 8 hours to 10 hours of shift, and I was, miss me with Cinema 4D. I don't want to have to do anything with it anymore. And after 3 months of doing this, I realized that the actual daily renders, the 3D, the fun that I have on this is something I can't throw away. This is a passion that I've never had in this way. So I had to decide, well, do I continue working and risk to lose it all, or do I quit at the studio and try it on my own? And I decided to leave the studio after 6 months, and it was a really good decision. This is just, of course, my personal experience. I mean, I'm pretty sure some of you work at studios as well and pretty much enjoy it a lot. It just wasn't for me because, as we get to it later, what really got me with all of this was basically, you know, graphic design is my big passion, as you can see, using all the right fonts and all that. Yeah, and I just noticed the more I worked there, the people were nice, the job was nice, the work was good, but I just realized how I started to hate this entire space so much that I just had to do something about it, unfortunately. And so the main question, why do I not do this for a living? It is one simple answer, which is choice. Because what I like the least about working at a studio that you as a employee don't get to choose what jobs you take on and what clients you work for. It's basically the supervisor that tells you, hey, you have to do this and to do this, to do this. Maybe it's different in some studios. I only had experience with 2 so far, and it was the same there. And that really, started to literally evaporate my passion for it. So now I don't do this for a living, even as a freelancer. So what do I do for a living? It might sound a little controversial, but I work at my family's apartment hotel and do housekeeping for 4 hours a day. That's my main job that I do. And I don't like it, but it has nothing to do with my true passion, and that's the great thing about it. I go there 4 hours a day, clean the stuff. It's brainless work. I don't have to think about it too much. I can think about what render I do. I can think about clients. I can really put all the energy that I have at the end of the day into this. And that's the beauty of it to me, and that's something that I'm very, very lucky that I can actually do that. So I work there for 4 hours, go home in the noon, and I have all the rest of the day for clients, for personal work. So I don't have to look at paying the bills and saying, I don't want this client, but I have to take it because, the energy bill is coming next month. And that is what really gave me my passion back, because I can do what I love to do and when I want to do it. It's just a really nice work ethic, in my opinion. Another thing that I do is I do sell asset packs recently. For example, one of the most sold ones are the puddle packs. It's basically a black and white texture of hand-painted puddles that I created for my own workflow. They're all hand-painted in Photoshop, and you can mix them in your road, and you get like really cool, simple results of roads. And I actually wanted to make them free, but Gumroad doesn't allow that, so you have to make them $1. So I made them for my own use, actually, and many of my followers said, hey, like, where do you get the puddles from? Can I buy them? And I'm like, you can have them for free, actually. So I uploaded to Gumroad, and it said, no, you have to do it for $1. So they are $1 now. But they have been used in many, many, many great projects that I very much look up to. For example, Clint Jones, Punisher, used them a lot in his renders. I know for a fact that some of the puddles in Need for Speed Heat are my puddles, which is also quite funny, and EA paid $1 for them. Made millions of it, paid $1 for it. I don't mind. I like seeing the puddles in the game. And then I also created different asset packs to use them with, which is quite important because, the puddles are just textures, and some people don't know how to use them, so I created a shader for it, a tutorial for it, how to use them. And in addition to it, I also created the rain ripples, which is basically animated textures that you can use as bump maps in the puddles when you make them. And they're like, animated rain ripples as if it was raining and all that. Because I see a lot of people simulating rain and then simulating the rain ripples, which technically is more realistic, of course, because that's how the real world works. But again, I'm all about efficiency, speed, and creating products that save as much time as you can and still bring out a relatively good result. So these rain ripples, for example, work amazing when you use them with post-edited rain. So once you put your rain in After Effects, you can't make it react to the street, right? And putting in rain ripples in After Effects is quite a tedious job. So you can just put the textures in, render the animation, put the overlay on there, and that's it. So that's, and I also made landscape because I kind of wanted to make use of World Create a little bit more. These are more for renders like these ones. You can just, beeple them up. And a little bit about the work that I do. So the clients that I work for, like I said, I work mainly in stage visuals a lot. Corona really fucked that over, to say the least. But it's starting again now, and starting to get more jobs. One of my most proudest moments is that I was actually part of the creation of the Excision Evolution Tour, which is the reason why I actually started doing stage visuals. For those of you who don't know Excision, in the concert and live show branch, he's probably the one known for the best visuals on the market. Because basically, everything you hear is something you have to see, so you really have to hand keyframe a 2-minute animation with hundreds of elements. It's super tedious, but it was a ton of fun. Didn't get lucky enough to see it in person, unfortunately, yet, but one day. And yeah, that's one thing I'm really proud of, because I started doing stage visuals because of this guy, and then doing visuals for it was amazing. And I learned a lot. So I learned the most from client work that I don't know how to do. So I take the job, they say, can you do it? I'm like, no, but I will learn it. And it works 9 out of 10 times. Another thing I did a few renders for McLaren, for example, for the full carbon fiber P1, which was also a really fun project. I'm just going to open my show reel for a second, so you can see some of the videos that I did. This also includes the McLaren render, and also some stills from for Maserati for the new MC20. And this is what I truly like about it, because I'm a car guy, and I'm working with car brands that allow me to make renders with their cars. It's just really great. For example, this is also a little short movie I worked on when I had a little bit of time during COVID. I basically I saw the show Chernobyl from HBO, and I thought, you know, like, I really enjoyed it, and I tried to do some renders, some different scenery just to showcase all of that, and also learned quite some there. And also in this reel you will see like that I work with different aspect ratios a lot. I make videos in 1:1, in 4:5, in 5:4, in 21:9, 16:9, everything. And I do these a lot in my free time when I have, you know, when I don't have a client at the moment. I can actually spend time on a rendering project like this. This is a collaboration with a good friend of mine, the very talented Ryan Talbot, good buddy of mine, very talented dude. And if we go to the next one, I think, yeah, going into car renders a lot of loops. I love doing like seamless loops as much as I can. They're really fun. They're a headache sometimes because you have to calculate a lot of stuff, but it's a lot of fun to work with loops. And yeah, if you look forward to this, you know, I also bring in some emotions into something. These are some stage visuals that I did, for example, for Rez. Or this one is the excision visual in action. So, for example, these are all hand keyframed. I try to use software like Signal, but the difficult part about that is that it's difficult to sync it to music that is not in rhythm, because, you know, Signal is all about BPM and stuff like that. So I actually developed my own way of syncing those visuals, because when you have a high poly model especially in Cinema 4D, you start to lose a couple of frames. So it's actually the excision visuals. I was working on them in 0.15 FPS and try to sync something to music with those kind of FPS. So I started using the sound effector to do that, but not to actually position all the, not to actually control the models, but I actually used, wait, how do I close this? There. So I actually used the sound effector to control other elements in my scene that are later invisible, so I have a reference, you know? So since I have a music background, what I did is I took the song that I had to do for a commission, I took it into FL Studio, completely ripped it apart into its single elements, into different sounds, you know, kick, snares, basses, and all that, and created an MP3 track for every single instrument for the entire song. That one took me about 2 hours, which wasn't too bad. But then I created a sound effector for every single one of those MP3 files. And if you have experience with the sound effector in Cinema 4D, you have a little window at the bottom right, I think, where you can see the sound wave. And the sound wave shows you, the sound wave is sort of like a visualization of the interpolation that you have to do for your keyframes. And I use the sound effector, first of all, to see the waveform, to see how I have to interpolate my keyframes. But then also I created different cubes at the side, like outside of my scene, that sort of move up and down with the different sound effectors. So I use those to see, oh, there is a kick, there is a snare, there is a bass, without even hearing the music for the entire project. And that one turned out to work really well. I did make a mistake in the beginning, so I rendered the resolution of this is actually 18.5K, which was long to render, to say the least. And I made a mistake, so I had to re-render everything again, which wasn't that nice. But the sound effector thing is something that I've not heard anybody do yet. So even other artists that work with me on this project, they were like, well, this is really cool. Like, did you use markers and stuff? It's so tedious. I'm like, no, I just use a sound effector. Really? Like, yeah, it's really easy. You don't use a sound effector to actually move objects. You just use a sound effector to see what the objects do, and then you work off of that. So you can hand sync as much as you want, as many elements as you want, without, with 1 FPS, doesn't matter. It looks good in the end, and that's what matters. So this is also something I want to talk about when it comes to client work as a freelancer. I'm sure many freelancers here know this problem. This is what what the client relation should look like. You get the information what you have to do. You set a price and budget with the client. You make a mood board, they like it, you make a first version, they like it or not, then you render it, and it's done. And I think we all know that talking to clients is usually more like this. You say, hey, this is what, they say, I want this, and you do that, and I say, no, this is not what I wanted. So what I started doing, because I got really sick of this, like of clients, and these are not big clients, these are the small clients, that have, 200 follower SoundCloud people that want a $1 million cover for $10. And so what I started to do in terms of price to stay relaxed, to have fun, is I just set a flat rate price for my work, depending on what kind of work it is, and then just say, look, you get 2 revisions, make up your mind in those 2 revisions, and if you need any more revisions, pay extra. And look at that, all of a sudden they know what they want. Like, once they have to pay for more revisions, they know what they want. And it really helped, because I managed to spend less time on these tedious, on these very, very tedious changes. The client is happier, nobody is stressed out. And I get to take on more projects, for example, personal projects. So this little system really helped me out. And the last thing I would like to talk about briefly is the new company that I'm part of. We started, me and a friend, and actually 2 more friends of his, we started a new company called Hint of Mint, which is an online digital art marketplace. And we saw all this ultra hype in the last year going on with NFTs. I'm pretty sure you all know these ones, which is understandably why the overall popularity and thoughts about NFTs aren't that great at the moment because of these, and I completely understand that. What we did, also, they are very, very, very bad for the environment, and we managed to fix that as well, which is super humbling to know. So what we do as Hint of Mint is we go to true artists, passionate artists like myself, like many of you, and really try to bring value to the piece, not through reselling it and making a quick buck of it, but actually being able to purchase something that you truly enjoy looking at for a good price. Because, you can always buy a Beeple for $70 million, right? And so since we have a blockchain technology that is called a layer 2 technology between Ethereum and Polygon, we're able to produce NFTs for 1/1,000,000th of the CO2 emission than what Ethereum usually does. I give you an example. Minting a piece on Foundation produces 980 grams of CO2 for every single transaction, which is insane. On Hint of Mint, you're at a 10,000th of a gram per mint, and you actually pay only once for each image. So even if the artwork has 10,000 editions, it produces the exact same amount of CO2, and it costs exactly the same, which is 1/10 of a cent instead of $200. So that gives us the option to create NFTs for a low price. You don't have to make an NFT that costs $20,000. The amount of people who can afford that are very, very limited. So instead, we make a high edition amount and sell them for $20 each. The artist still gets compensated for the work, and more people are actually able to afford it. At the same time, people don't want to invest into crypto to get into the art business. They want to just say, okay, I want to buy this with PayPal, I want to buy this with credit card, and that's what we're working on as well. We try to get more people into this business and out of the collectibles and into the art scene. Because in the future, you know, right now we have a physical art world, we have a digital art world. And I think in the future is combining the two. The future is not only digital and the future is not only physical, it's going to be the combination of the two. And that's what we try to improve as much as we can. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you very much for listening again, Fabio and Jason. Thank you very much for listening. And, you know, go follow me. Very important.
Fabian, stay right there, because I am sure that people might have questions.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to the part of the NFT. We decided to talk a little bit about NFTs at the very beginning, because this is when you have had breakfast, you don't have a lot of alcohol inside of your body, and so you don't want to throw up. Because that's what happens with most artists, right? They hear the word NFT and they're like, oh!
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about it a little bit more. I was actually quite nervous talking about it, I gotta be honest, because, you know, a lot of people seem to dislike it because they know one part of it, but there's so much more to it, and the part that is actually good about it is the least popular one at the moment.
Yes, and that's why we don't allow food in here, so that they cannot throw it at you. But if you guys have any questions for Fabian, raise your hand and I'll come to you with the microphone, and then we can talk about everything. Come on. Nigel, you lift your hand. Okay.
What motivates you with your artwork, with things, technology coming down the line, such as AI coming into it?
That's a very good question. Speaking about AI, actually, I am a fan of it when I use it for my human artworks. I don't really appreciate, you know, making AI artworks and then selling them as, look what I made, because it's not. It's a mix of what other people made and you just combined them, or let them combine, actually. But what I use AI for at the moment is I created to make textures, for example. So one render I'm working on right now, I actually should have brought a work in progress, but it is a alien laboratory. And it has like anatomy prints on the wall. You know, like when you go to the doctor, you have these prints with the human body with all the descriptions and stuff. This is what I use AI for, to create these textures, because they're in the background. Nobody really sees what it's written on them, and it would take very long to create these, and it would just not be time efficient to do that for a render like that. But what motivates me the most is, honestly, at the moment, it's how far I've come. So I've done it for 5.5 years, never missed a day. And in my mind, it's just like, I can't quit now. Like, I'm gonna go off to 10 or 20 years. I wanna do this for longer. And looking back, you know, seeing the progress that I made, how much better my renders got, and all that, it just shows me like how far I've come, and I sort of see how far I could get when I don't stop. That's why.
We're also using AI, at least myself, with the company that I'm working at, to talk to the clients. And it's fantastic, because the clients think that they have imagination and they have all like these beautiful ideas. And then when they talk to the machine is like, who the fuck are you, man?
But
shut the fuck up.
There was this cool meme I saw on Twitter where it was like, everybody's scared that AI art is gonna take all of us out of business, but to be able to use AI art, the client has to know what he wants, so we're safe. Like
Is there any more questions? Okay, Fabian, thanks a lot.
Thank you once again,
really
very much. Thank you.